Chapter 16. Embrace Uncertainty. Sun Tzu's 5 Fixations. If I haven't convinced you by now that life is all about our choices, then I have failed you dearly. Because it is! And if we spend most of our short life telling ourselves that we shouldn't do this or do that, then we'll slowly but surely be strengthening a negative and unconstructive outlook on life. Why not replace that self-talk with thoughts that'll uplift and inspire us instead? When we choose to fixate on problems, we get stuck in them like quicksand. The more we struggle against them, the deeper trouble we'll find ourselves in. But if we choose to approach problems with a positive, constructive attitude, they become less threatening and more workable. Our problem-solving mind kicks in, rather than our panicky mind that wants to flee or resort to destruction. We'll find a source of energy for perseverance and strength. We therefore need to be protective of the information we absorb and, unfortunately for some, the friends we keep. Information has a great influence on what we believe and our inner stories. If we talk about the same topic enough times, if we repeat it enough times in our heads, we can't help but buy into it. Mao Zedong said, "A lie told 100 times will eventually become the truth." A lie told 100 times will still be a lie, but the more we hear it, the more we'll transform it into truth. You probably believe that your mind is strong enough to filter out the noise, but in reality, you have no way of knowing how much of it is unconsciously seeping into your mind. A young woman who has just gotten pregnant will suddenly notice the many women around her who are also pregnant. The number of pregnant women around her probably hasn't changed, but her mindset has definitely changed. Her perception is altered by her mental state, and it influences what she notices and focuses on. Our eyes follow where our hearts and minds go. So stop reading the news, or at least choose to read it from reputable sources. Sun Tzu gives us 5 areas to look out for that will hurt our ability to see with clarity if we fixate on them. Take these as little warning signs that can alert us if we're about to go off course. Sun Tzu's 5 Fixations. Fixation 1. A fixation on the certainty of death. If our mind is already focused on our own destruction and doom, then how will we be able to see the opportunities? We'll obsess over how things won't work out and the direness of the situation at hand. Fixation 2. A fixation on the certainty of life. If we believe too much in hope and the miracle of life, we absolve responsibility for our actions and consequences. We want to believe that there's a higher power looking over us, allowing us to relinquish our duties and accountability, because things will be fine. This is a surefire way to becoming lazy and complacent. Fixation 3. A fixation on anger and emotions. We spoke about the risks of displaying emotions before, but some people take displaying emotions like a badge of honor. Whether it's anger, happiness, or sadness, they're accustomed to only thinking from the narrow perspective of whatever emotion they're currently feeling. Fixation 4. A fixation on our reputation and image. If we're too concerned with how others perceive us or what others think of us, we're easily unnerved by the threat of someone tarnishing our reputation or using our image against us. We will be paralyzed and do everything in our power to protect our image over everything else. Fixation 5. A fixation on compassion and people. If we are too compassionate about our people and followers, we'll feel handcuffed and find it difficult to maneuver freely. We'll think too much about all their individual needs and concerns and forget about the bigger picture. It'll be hard to make the necessary sacrifices when the moment comes. Protecting the people we lead and taking care of the people we love is part of our duty as a leader. We don't need to go out of the way to make it a point. If we overemphasize it, we may even highlight them as targets. Like Hang Sin, we might instill in our followers the fear of death so they fight with the ferocity of 10 men, but we always have to be looking for the opportunity for victory. We can't be a gymnast who fixates on the balance beam because we'll eventually fall. Placing our mind in perspective in the most constructive place is important. A leader that sees only doom and gloom will never be able to see the opportunity for escape. We will have lost before the fight has started. But if we believe in the possibility for victory, even in the most dire situations, we'll eventually find an opening. If we place our mind in the right position, will find ways to be productive because we have an amazing mind that will help us get to where we want to go. Isn't that remarkable? Be a poker player. Like other fortunate children growing up in middle-class Australia, I mostly believed that I had control over my life and who I would become. I could be anything or anyone, and it was my responsibility to make sure I became someone. And if I was being totally honest, there was probably more than a little bit of entitlement here. I would make something of my life because everyone else around me seemed to be doing just fine, and I would be the same. All I needed was a clear vision and goals. A 1,979 Harvard study analyzed the graduating Harvard MBA class to determine what impact goals had on the career path of students. After following the career progress of the students for over 10 years, it found that the 3% of graduates who had written down their goals ended up earning 10 times as much as the other 97% of their class combined. I'm not so sure if their conclusion was completely correct, but people love these kinds of stories. It puts life squarely within our control. We can change our fate as easily as writing our thoughts down on a piece of paper. Every inch of us wants to believe that we've earned and fought for everything positive in our lives. If you don't have wealth, health, or knowledge, it's because you didn't work hard enough or put enough effort in. Sun Tzu didn't believe that we had as much control over life. He saw life as a series of probabilities because we never had perfect information about how things were. The situation was always changing in ways that we couldn't see, which meant that even if we were able to travel back in time to make the same decisions as yesterday, our day-to-day could still be completely different because of variables hidden from us. The future was in no way predetermined. And to Sun Tzu, the best way to live in a probabilistic world was to be a poker player. Poker is a game of incomplete information where players are forced to make decisions under conditions of extreme uncertainty. With each hand, players are constantly searching for hints of new information and then reassessing their odds. Meanwhile, everyone else is trying to do the same, while also hiding information from each other. Poker players accept that there's an element of luck in each hand. They can make the best decision possible at the time and still lose their hand because they never completely know what cards were dealt until the end. Some people might find this kind of uncertainty intimidating, but to poker players, it's precisely the uncertainty that makes poker fun. It's the rush that comes from successfully bluffing another player into thinking that you have an ace-high hand when in fact you only have a 3. Sun Tzu obviously wasn't actually a poker player, but if he were alive today, he might have been. Not because he would have enjoyed bluffing overconfident young men at the poker table, but because he would have thrived on believing in the opportunities created by uncertainty. According to Sun Tzu, uncertainty was something you worked with. Yes, it could take things away from you, but it was also the ultimate bearer of life. It was the ultimate source of hope. No matter how bad our affairs appear to be, there is always a way out. It's heartbreaking that children eventually learn that they have to keep it real. They give up on their grand dreams and scale down their aspirations to versions that fit more appropriately into the average reality. This, I'm sure, is due in no small part to the helpful advice of parents and teachers. We stop believing that we're capable of achieving anything and being anybody. We trade those dreams in and draw for ourselves a nice, contained space to play in. The problem is, the size and shape of that space is largely determined by our past. It's determined by the friends we had growing up, the school we went to, or the job we first landed out of school. So, how can we know how large to draw the box or what shape it should be when there's so much more to see and experience? How does anyone know? A Chinese philosopher once said, if you try to control sheep by fencing them into a small area, they will constantly be trying to find ways to escape. But if you give them the illusion of freedom by fencing them into a large area instead, they will happily stay in the relatively small space they've designated for themselves anyway. I don't mean to sound alarmist, but we're the sheep. We look at other people and convince ourselves that we can't be like them. We don't have the connections, we don't have the smarts, or we don't have the resources. We draw boundaries for our lives based on what we believe to be true in an incredibly deterministic way. Why should we be so proud and stubborn about our future? What will it take to fight the urge to keep ourselves small and fenced in? Sometimes I think that, for an outsider, there's nothing more impenetrable than the American political system. Candidates and legislators have frighteningly similar backgrounds. They're typically from wealthy, connected families, are highly educated lawyers, and are typically white men with the average age of 58 years. But look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was elected to the United States Congress on January 3, 2019, by defeating the long-standing incumbent, Joe Crowley. She was only 27 at the time, and she was working as a bartender. Irrespective of your political views, this was an amazing feat for anybody. And to me, at least, she is living proof that nothing is impervious to change. A poker player knows that with each hand comes a new opportunity. They can reset and regain their bearings. But we're probably not going to get such defined signals from life. Most of the time, life is only sending us inconclusive signals at best. As a young man learning to be an adult, I used to take life quite seriously. My future depended on each decision, and I had to make the most out of every opportunity. I would get frustrated if my thinking wasn't as strategic or expansive as it could be. I would get even more frustrated when I inevitably lost patience and said, "Screw it!" It was tiring, and I felt as though I was carrying a heavy weight on my shoulders. We often believe the rest of our lives will be determined by a single decision. And that may sometimes be true. But your life is more likely to be determined by decades of small, seemingly inconsequential decisions that you can't even remember, rather than one or two big ones. Over time, I'm slowly learning that it doesn't always have to feel heavy. I'm realizing that judgment isn't developed overnight. We weren't created overnight. And I'm guessing that, like me, you're probably also in the very fortunate position where the world doesn't depend on your judgment to survive. So I'm reminding you and myself to give life some time. Take Sun Tzu's lessons and use them to improve your craft. Open your eyes and let the world educate you.